Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Black Men with Purpose podcast. For those of you joining us for the first time, it's a pleasure to have you with us. This is a safe space where we share our thoughts on a multitude of topics in hopes of helping Black males, young and not so young, overcome obstacles and challenges that can be hindrances to happiness, productivity, and success. We believe that through our experiences, successes, and failures, we can have some conversations that might help other Black males in their respective journeys through this thing we call life. And on today's episode, our topic is going to be education and the importance thereof. And before we get going, I just want to give a shout out. As you all can see, we are a man down. The good Reverend Dr. B is not with us this evening. He's doing fine. He had an engagement or a commitment that he had for this evening, so he will be back with us on our next episode. So again, our topic today is going to be education and the importance of it. So anybody want to get us jumped off this evening? Wow,
Yeah,
everybody's
I'll,
shy tonight.
yes, I'll jump in. Education, I think sometimes can get a little confused, or I should say, people's perspective about what that really means varies. Of course, there's formal education. Uh, but really, I think it's for me, it's about the commitment to being a lifelong learner, right? And so, and that never ends. Keeping your mind sharp, but also learning things. And of course, once you've learned them, people can't take that knowledge from you. So for me, it's about the commitment to being a lifelong learner. Uh, However, I do think that the conversation surrounding education, uh, especially in this country, can be kind of a hot button type topic uh, as we think about segregation, desegregation, the role that that's played on the education of African Americans in this country, uh, as well as access to quality education, which also is something I think we should probably spend a little more time talking about in this country, because those that have access to it don't necessarily uh, see the gap that exists. Uh, whether it's access to books or learning about different things that maybe some of the systems or institutions might not want us to know about. So, but I think that individually, each individual needs to have a thirst or hunger to become more educated or to gain more knowledge. So, it's certainly an important topic. Uh, and I think that there are different aspects to it. So I'm certainly looking forward to hearing everyone's perspective on it and seeing where the conversation goes.
Yeah, no, and I agree with everything you said there, Rod. And you hit on something when you talked about desegregating schools. I think that in a Black community, education has always kind of been important. Um, and these when you talk about desegregating schools to managing and having to create HBCUs because of the lack of access, that's something that's always been, I think, at the forefront of some conversations in the Black community. But you're also right, and when you talk about how I think people have this kind of this perspective about education that's a little maybe misplaced, because you're right. Yeah, education, college is extremely important to me, right? That's a huge thing for me. But I also recognize that that is not the only means of receiving an education. I too believe that it's a commitment to lifelong learning in whatever ways that means, or in whatever ways that mean. And when we talk about reading, whether we're talking about reading, if we're talking about vocational schools, which is kind of an umbrella term, right, for technical schools and trade schools. We could be talking about, if you want to learn about real estate, right? Getting a real estate license, but educating yourself in some way is the only way that you're really going to be able to do anything in this world. And again, that does not necessarily mean going to college. As big of a thing that is for me, there are other. I realize that that's not for everybody. College is absolutely not for everybody. But you have to educate yourself in some way. I think when I think about the times in which we grew up, growing up in the 70s and the 80s, um, I think in a black community, for the most part, the only way, right? Things were much different back then, and the only way, always some exceptions to rules, but for the most part, the only way you were going to have any real success in this world was to get a college education, right? That was pretty much it. And even then, it was still going to be a bit of a struggle because we're talking about either doing civil rights or right after civil rights, when things had not progressed to the point that they have now. So I understand, I recognize that we live in a time where, because of technology and all these other different things, all these other platforms and things in the world that we live in, college education is not the only means of success. But with that said, you still have to do something if you expect to be successful. I mean, I know that you can have a TikTok page, you can do whatever it is these days, right? And just get popular for not doing much of anything, and being able to monetize that. But even with that, you still, right, you still have to have some sort of knowledge regarding the inner workings of TikTok or how to manage your money, or you have to have some sort of education on something. You can't just rest on your laurels and expect to be successful if you are not educating yourself somehow in some way. And I'll go ahead and turn it over and let someone else talk. I know we'll kind of continue this. So,
Well, I'll hop in real quick. I'm not going to be long this time. I agree with both you and Rod, Kev. Education is extremely important. One of the things that we, especially because we were all military, a lot of folks, that seems to be some folks' uh, path of choosing, which is great. But a lot of folks don't realize that there is a vocational test, an aptitude test to be able to get into the military. So either way, you're going to have at least some sort of education. And military it requires a high school diploma or at least a GED to be able to get in. Some branches require a higher score with a GED. A lot of folks don't realize that, but the fact of the matter is that the education is important, even to go into the military or to, like you said, to learn a trade. You're no matter what, you're still going to be learning. You go to McDonald's, they don't just put you on the register or put you on fries. They train you first, so there is going to be education that is involved, whether you realize it or not. But it is important. We all should learn something new every day. I love it when I walk every morning, and most mornings I talk to Kevin when I'm walking. And what he doesn't realize, because I never tell him, is I'm listening to him, and he may say some things, and I'm like, okay, file that away, because that's some good stuff right there. Or I'm talking to any of you, and and I'm picking up on stuff, and this is like we've had the discussion. I don't know everything. I don't profess to know everything. I'm never going to know everything, but I at least like to learn something new every day, and I learn a lot from you brothers. So that being said, I'll yield the floor to John.
How John wanted the floor yielded to me? I was hoping y'all just skip by me. That's great with everything that's been said. I totally agree, and I love what Ray said. Not professing to know everything. I think that's truly the beginning of knowledge, and um, successfully utilizing an education is recognizing that there's not a we're right and it's over. There's a continuous education, and we just continuously become a little less wrong than we were. And that curiosity for me is the biggest thing. Education. Obviously systemic or systematic, better yet. I think systemic kind of has bad connotation. So we'll go systematic education, university, schools, training, so forth and so on, but also being educated is an enlightening experience being educated on something that you didn't even know you were trying to figure out or whatever. And I have to say, I love the pivot that Dr. Kev made with the TikTok. Like, look, you you got to get an education to know how to use that stuff and how to post it. Like, you don't just show up now, you know. So, and I think this is an important conversation. Just changing people's minds on education. It is continuous, and I believe that all education has value. Um, and we'll talk about that tonight. But intent, purpose, how you go about what you do with said education, all of these are factors that are important in education too.
Yeah. So great point. And as you brothers were talking, one of the things that I thought about was take your mind back to the days when our ancestors were slaves in this
Hmm,
country,
Mm,
and for the most part, undereducated as far as formal education would go, but definitely skilled in other areas. Whether it was teaching themselves to be a carpenter, a bricklayer, uh, an electrician, or what have you, and how valuable that skill was. You know, uh, it just makes you wonder because I think that we've lost some of that along the way, right? Because, for instance, if you're a master electrician today, uh, yeah, you can make, you know, a lots of money, right?
yeah.
Uh, but we're not really teaching that in schools, right? So I think part of it is almost like it's come full circle where those things used to be valued. If you go to any mega church in any community across the country, you'll have all kinds of skilled folks in those churches. Uh, but are we really utilizing that uh, to further our communities, to build them up? You know, and instead of moving out to the suburbs, are we, redoing our own housing in our communities so that so people have livable places there. So this whole thing regarding education uh, is really important, but I think that what it actually is gets lost. With technology, going from the industrial age now into the information age. People have different desires as far as what they want to learn and how they want to work. Uh, but at the end of the day, uh, and this is actually my point. Sorry for taking so long to get there,
Oh
but I
no, you
think
good.
I think the idea of entrepreneurship and taking control of your own destiny is really the thing that's not taught enough of. I know it wasn't when we were growing up.
Yeah,
Probably with the younger generation now, they seem to be a little more engaged in that, using their God given talent and ability and finding a way uh, to monetize it or create a
hmm
living for themselves. So, so I say that to say that so education uh, valuable and is important, but I think we collectively have to do a better job of helping young people define what that is for them and what it looks like, right?
yeah,
Because it doesn't necessarily look like what society says it looks like, you know, where you have to go to school and you have to get certain grades so that you can get into a certain college,
right.
because in that college they're going to teach you the things that's going to help you make a certain amount of money. uh, if you can get past the student loan debt, because I still don't understand why education is so expensive in this country, you know, uh, and because of the expense of it and what it puts on people to try and get from under, instead of, for instance, a doctor or a lawyer, instead of focusing on their profession and providing what their profession has taught them to provide to their clients or patients, they're just trying to make money so they can get from under that debt.
Hmm.
And I think it impacts, the quality of care they get, a quality of the defense that they get, and not to just point out lawyers and doctors, but those are just two examples.
Yeah, I man, you want to talk about the flaws of this education system here in this country? Oh my God, it is ridiculous. I heard it once said that, I know that I'm not for everybody, but free healthcare and free education should be. And I'm all about that. Like, and I've pointed that out, I think, many times. Um, in my opinion, I see, man, it's ridiculous that healthcare and education cost, because there are plenty of countries out there who are not doing as well as this country, right, economically, and their citizens all have free healthcare and free education, and it makes no sense to me. I mean, I get it, capitalism. I know, but it's ridiculous that we charge. And you think about some of the the countries in this world who are thriving, right, and they have great education systems. I'll just take Finland for one, right? Finland, I believe, at least the last time I looked, I think they had the number one education system in the world, right? No standardized test, which that's another topic all on its own. Standardized testing is ridiculous to me as well. Um, but they do it right, right? And they don't charge for education either. But without getting too deep into all of that, I guess I will also say that I think one of the important factors of getting an education is because it allows you to think critically, right? I think about this quote by James Baldwin that says, the purpose of education is to create in a person the ability to look at the world for himself, to make his own decision, to say to himself, this is black or this is white, to decide for himself whether there is a God in heaven or not, right? And so all he's saying with that is he's talking about critically thinking. And that's not to say that you can't critically think if you don't have some sort of education. However, if you're not educated in some way, shape, or form, being able to critically think, you're handicapped in doing it because you don't have all of the information that you need, right? And when I talk about critical thinking is, it really affects your quality of life, right? It's going to ensure that you're happy, that you're making the best decisions and doing all of those sorts of things. In order to be able to do that, um, we all think, right? To step back for a second, right? We all think, but much of our thinking, it can be biased, it can be distorted, it can be uninformed or just downright prejudiced, right? And so we have to have the ability to be able to look at things, approach problems systematically, right? To see links between ideas, to evaluate arguments, to draw our own conclusions about things. And that's what critical thinking is all about. And if you don't have some sort of education, no matter what field it may be in, again, it does not have to be, I'm not strictly talking a college education, but if you're not trained in something, you're not educating yourself through reading books and doing different things to learn and again to educate yourself, your critical thinking is going to be flawed. Somebody can tell you something, and because you don't know how to critically think, you're just going to take it, right? You're going to take them at their word, because what information do you have to be able to combat that? So to me, that's another reason for being able to get educated, or another reason to get educated, to educate yourself, and so that you can critically think and do it well.
One of these days, I'm gonna learn not to follow you, brother. One of these days, I'm gonna learn. But today ain't the day, I guess. It's funny that you mentioned that about critical thinking. And the first thing that popped into my head, and I hate I'm not gonna mention that orange person's name, But that's who he really likes is the uneducated, because that's what do
Yeah.
these folks do? The first thing they do is when they quote anything, they quote Fox. Whatever Fox tells them, it's got to be the gospel. Even though it's all lies. But that's neither here nor there. I'm gonna skip on past that. Rod had mentioned something, about just he mentioned about master electricians. I've got a list of here of some salaries, salary ranges. Unfortunately, the electrician was not one of them. But I know you did talk also about entrepreneurship. Man, I did not know how important that was. I didn't see it. Most of us hadn't seen it where it was, somebody we knew. For me, I was lucky. My mom. My mom opened up her own business. My mom went to cosmetology school. She opened up her own beauty salon. She was one of the bigger ones in Warren. So I didn't recognize the importance of that until I got older. And all the challenges that went along with it. My mom doing that, um, having to unfortunately face, the criticism or the crab in the barrel syndrome, because there were folks that were like, well, I'm not going you were here at GE with us before. I'm not coming to let you do my hair, and I'm not going to pay you. I'm not going to pay you what you're asking for. So she had to fight that battle. But again, I did not recognize the importance of entrepreneurship until I got much older, and I was really able to appreciate everything that my mom went through. Student loans. You guys talked about student loans. My God, we're talking about complaints on student loan repayment. How the government, Joe Biden basically is paying $10,000 to $20,000 of student loans for folks, and people are complaining about that. But yet nothing is said about like some of these big colleges that have huge sports programs like Clemson, like Alabama, like Ohio State. Where these coaches are making multi-millions of dollars every year, and these kids who are out there busting their ass on the field are basically, they're complaining about them getting the NIL contracts, and because you're getting a free education, but it's free, but they're still putting their bodies on the line for your entertainment, and the universities are making buku money off of these kids, but nobody wants to discuss that. One of my friends, Alan, he had said something today. He had posted on Facebook. He had took out some student loans, and that brother said that he owes 10 times more. Now, again, he's 54 years old. He still owes 10 times more than what he borrowed initially on student loans. That's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, we should be having free education in this country, but they don't want to tax the right people. That's what education is a business. That's how they're looking at it. It is a big business, and they don't want to lose any money. And these politicians are being, I don't care what anybody says, their palms are being greased, so they'll look the other way, and they're going to go against any kind of free education in this country, because that's not helping the poorer folks in the country, or the middle class. So I'm gonna get off my soapbox. I'll talk about these salary ranges here the next go around.
I'm trying to think, where should I jump in after all of that? What was the point before Ray got on? No, I mean, when you talk about education, yeah, that's right, LJ, exactly.
LJ,
Get them,
yes.
LJ.
Too.
Come on, nephew.
The corruption and all of that, man, is crazy. When you just think about having an education about, so you talked about like entrepreneurship or having like niche skill sets or education. I was reading a report where there's 182 Congress folks that were doing insider trading, and they're trading, and the numbers split down the middle. So this wasn't no Republican Democrat thing.
Mhm.
It was bad actors everywhere, and they on these committees, and they are trading and making short sale, all this stuff based on information they're getting from committees they're serving on and all
Hmm.
that. So, I mean, when we talk about education, man, there's a lot of it out here to get. I think that that's one of the things that's just kind of opening your mind. What is an education? I kind of touched on it. Intent. So, if you're going to get a body of knowledge, what is your intent? Like, you know, Dr. Kev up here, leadership and coaching and developing organizational cultures and things like that. And so his education is it amplifies, his knowledge base in those areas. But I know people that have advanced degrees and it's like they just wanted to get them to have them, and like, like they got a doctorate in some amazing field, and then yeah, I work for the VA, and thank you for working for the VA, but I mean, that's a lot to go get all of that education and then just be like, I got it now. Let me put it on my wall and go back to doing what I was doing. I think especially what Rod said, our communities, we need comprehensive education in our communities. We need the educated academia. We need the educated in entrepreneurial skills. We need the educated in, hands-on skills and tools and electricians and things like that. We need people that are educated in, I was just taking some voice classes because I'm a classic throat speaker. And so when I speak for a long time, I wear my throat out. And so I was taking voice classes and seeing all that goes into speaking and singing, that's an education. I thought, oh, you just get up and you can sing and woo, 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 and then it's good. But like they gotta learn stuff, man. The levels to which education go to, and just getting outside of how systematic education, there's all these inequities in it. But like Ray said, just being able to see, being educated in things that are valuable in a way that fits who you are, your skill set, your personalities. A lot of times we're pushing people into educational goals that don't fit them, what their desires in life are, what they want to do, what they can do. And if we can really be more comprehensive, I wish we wouldn't rush and make people feel like they got to get a degree by 22 or they got to go to major. I went to college, man, and I don't think there's nothing like even being active duty. There was nothing that could replace that experience for me. But the education was the experience, not the stuff that I learned. I did nothing with those classes. Nothing. Nothing. Let me get off my soapbox.
Wow. Oh, that's a great point, and as you were talking, I was thinking about why why isn't everyone either educated or excited about being educated, right? And my mind went back to my own upbringing, and I will tell you one of the things, and I'm not sure how old I was, but one of the things I remember my mother telling me and teaching me was that education is your best means to change your circumstances.
Yep.
Right? If you want to change anything about your circumstances, get educated. Open your mind to the possibility of those things that you learn. And then she doubled down on it by providing me the opportunity to get an education in environments where I could really do nothing but focus on learning rather than all the other things that were going on outside the classroom, in the hallways, the challenge of getting to and from school without having to fight your way in and out. Uh, so when you think about that and you think about the things that young people have to go through every single day in this country, and now you've added on top of that, everyone has a cell phone with a camera. uh, social media, uh, texting, sexting, bullying. Young people have to deal with a lot. And then we have to worry about whether or not someone's going to come to the school and shoot it up
Yeah.
with an
Yep.
assault weapon. And I just sometimes, I just don't quite understand why the people and the politicians in this country can't see that we have to do a better job. And then if you really want to know from my perspective what this country feels about education, look at what we pay our teachers,
Huh. Yep.
Facts.
Yep.
right? I mean, we literally are just paying them to be glorified babysitters
Yep.
as opposed to
Yep.
educators.
Yep.
And so I think that's a broader conversation that needs to take place because it needs to happen, and if I'm to talk to any politician, I really want to know, you know, how they believe we can change the perspective surrounding uh, the institution of education, institutions of higher learning in this country. To me, that tells you all you need to know about them, right? Because capitalism, is taken over. Well, it is what America is built on, but it seems to be the only thing that America cares about, right? Because I can tell you that there are a lot of decisions being made that the day to day citizens are not aware of or privy to by people that we elect to do certain things
Yeah.
on our behalf that are not really serving our best interests, you know. And the last thing is, if you really want to know, follow the money.
Yep.
There it is.
There's very few politicians that go to Washington that don't leave as millionaires,
True.
you know. So, and everyone's justified because of capitalism. If I can find a way to capitalize on what I know, my position or authority that I have, relationships that I have, then this is America. I should be able to do that. But those that really suffer are the day to day citizens that deserve education and knowledge of things so that they can make more and better informed decisions that impacts their lives on a daily basis. You know, uh, and I was reading about how uh, the Rockefellers and some of those older families in this country that had the the money and the power to impact things like our educational system. Uh, and I think I had mentioned it before in a previous episode about why financial literacy isn't taught in schools. Why don't we teach young people how money actually works and circulates in this country so they have a
Yep.
better understanding of it before they get out there to pursue making it or spending it?
Yep.
So I'll turn it over to you, Kevin.
Man, a lot of great points in there, and I agree. There are a lot of different topics or subjects that should be taught in schools that aren't. And I'll take that a step further and say that there are some of those topics that I think should be taught in all schools are actually taught in some schools, and you know what I mean by some schools, right? I
Hmm.
mean it's about where the money is. Again, they teach certain topics and certain subjects that don't translate and aren't being taught in the underserved and underprivileged communities, and that is, man, it is so unfortunate. And you're right, so many politicians out here, it is about the money for them. It's about the money. It's about control. As you well know, you can see that banning books, which is it just it's ridiculous to me, to the concept of banning any book to me is just
In
foreign.
2022, when everybody got Google in their phone and you banning books, like really?
Ugh, it's ridiculous. It makes no sense to me. It truly doesn't. And and the point about the pay, for teachers as well. That's another thing that just irritates my soul, right? And that's another thing that Finland, and I hate to keep harping on Finland, but Finland gets so many things right. They really do. That country is they really get a lot of things right. But one of the things is how they pay their teachers. They pay their teachers very, very well. Um, something that obviously we don't even come close to doing. Um, but the point I was going to make, I know I kind of got off there and thinking about all of the great points that Rod was making, but one of the things that I wanted to kind of mention too is I think as parents we have to practice what we preach, and um, I think about a lot of the things that we've been talking about, right? And I didn't always feel this way, the way that I do now. For me, it was all about college, and again, that speaks to my mentality based upon the times in which I grew up. And I think about when Kayla was young, right? And I forced this whole concept and this whole thing, my educational beliefs, um, I essentially forced on her. Kayla never liked school. She never did. She did it because she had no choice, right? And then, but as she started to get older and got in college and did all of that, my mentality about it changed. And I'm like, you know what? As long as she is doing something toward, bettering herself, some sort of education does not have to be college. She is a fantastic artist. I mean, fantastic artist. She's amazing. That is just an absolute talent of hers. But do you have to have a college education, college education to do that? No, you don't have to. Is my preference for her to get a college education? Yeah, it is. But at the same time, she's grown, and I just want her to be successful. I want her to do something that she wants to do, something that she enjoys doing, and to get there however she needs to get there. And I need to support that, right? So that's kind of my point. Just because college is for me, and Kayla got all the way to her senior year, and she decided, you know what, I just can't do this anymore as a senior. And you know what? That's fine. That's fine. Um, as long as you are doing something, again, getting some sort of education somehow, some way to accomplish your goals and get where you want to be in life, I am going to support that. Just because it doesn't match, my perspective of how you should do it doesn't mean that my way is the only way or the right way, even, right? Is there really a right way? My way versus her way, there's no right or wrong as long as she gets to that end goal, right? And I'm going to do everything I can to support her and help her through that. So I think that it is imperative for us as parents to, not just shove college down our kids' throats or shove the military into them or you got to go to trade school or no, listen to them, figure it out what it is, talk to them, figure out what it is they want to do, and then help them figure out what it is that's going to get them there, whatever vehicle that may be. Again, whether it's trade school, whether it's college, whether it's whatever, you know. So, and I know not everyone agrees with that. I understand that. I didn't always agree with that perspective that I have on it now, but
Yeah. Well, it's funny because when Rob was talking about the politicians, and I know John said something about the politicians. Boy, I tell you, the one thing I say is all politicians are crooks. I don't care what anybody says. Every last one of them are crooked. Republican, Democrat, whatever. They're all crooked. They're not looking out for anybody but themselves. I mean, period, point blank. Unless it's affecting them. The weapons of mass destruction, these AR-15s, it's not going to affect it doesn't affect them, and until it does, they're not going to worry about having a responsible gun law. It has to affect them first. Once it hits home, then they'll worry about, okay, we've got to do something about it. Same with the drug epidemic. I mean, back in the day, the crack epidemic was a black problem, but then all of a sudden, here we come with the opioids. Oh, well, now we need education. These people need help. Where black folks that were crack addicts, they went to prison. It's not, it doesn't, until it affects them, they don't give a damn. Sorry, I didn't mean to say that. Anyway, the school systems, um, man, look what they did. I mean, how you put Betsy DeVos as your secretary of education when she never stepped foot into a public school. She went to private schools. Their goal was to take money away from the public school systems to help these doggone charter schools. How does that help the majority of the folks? It don't. It doesn't help the underprivileged, the underserved. It not at all. The Rod, you mentioned financial literacy. It's not taught because it's going to help those the poor folks learn how to spend their money more wisely. You know, if we got folks out here buying Jordans when they barely got a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out, well, then guess what? Nike's happy. We're gonna keep them poor. But that's why they're not trying to teach anything like financial literacy, because they know that's going to help keep the poor and underprivileged poor. That's exactly what it's going to do. But anyway, I'm gonna. I got a small list here of the trade schools. A plumber. A plumber can earn anywhere from a good qualified plumber can earn anywhere from 27.96 to 45.48 an hour. Crane operator, same amount, 27.96 to 45.98 an hour. Wind turbines, because we're heading into clean energy, $27 to $39 an hour. Uh, Commercial drivers, 25 to $38 an hour. Heavy equipment mechanic, $25 to $37 an hour. HVAC person, everybody needs air conditioning, everybody needs heat. They can get 24 to $40 an hour. Uh, Auto body repair, 22 to $35 an hour. A welder, $21 to $30 an hour. A carpenter, $16 to $52 an hour is the range right now. And an auto mechanic, it says here, if they're working for a company, can make $21 an hour to $32 an hour. And I can tell you, my mechanic, this dude charges $90 an hour. And he's a Ford master mechanic, a certified Ford master mechanic. So there are people that like to work with their hands. There are a ton of options out there where you don't have to go sit into a classroom and get a bachelor's degree. If you like working with your hands, there are plenty of options out there, and people just need to be made aware of that. And as important as formal education is, we also need to make sure that those folks get educated as well as to what they can actually earn out there. I'm off the soapbox.
And John, before you jump in, Ray, I wanted to make there's to validate your point about financial literacy and why it's not taught in the hood, so to speak, right? And I agree with you. I think that is a huge reason as to why something like that would not be instituted in underprivileged schools. I think about a quote, and it sounds funny because the person who quoted it was Huey Freeman in the Boondocks, but it's still a very valid point. And the quote
Mm-hmm.
is, once you comprehend the threat an educated Black man poses to the global system of white supremacy, you can understand why the educational system as an institution is designed to suppress and even annihilate the mental elevation of the African American child. And there's so much truth in that. And I wholeheartedly believe that is a large part of the reason why, you know, certain things are not taught in those schools. I think about I want to be careful here because I don't want this to come across the wrong way. But my wife, you all know this, my wife is white, right? And so I have two bonus daughters that I call them, and then I have my daughter, right? My daughter's Black, my two bonus daughters are white. And I think about, and we've been together for 10 years. In fact, 10 years next weekend. But I think about when we got together and all three of them were in schools, right? Separate schools. Kayla was going to school in Maryland, and my two bonus daughters were going to school in New Jersey. But regardless of the location, right? Kayla was going to school in Prince George's County, which has been traditionally one of the most affluent like black counties in this country, right? So it supposedly has a good school system. And I looked at, man, it became so clear to me the differences. I looked at the curriculum that my two bonus daughters had versus the curriculum that Kayla had. Oh my God, they were so drastically different, right? And why were they different? Well, you look at where they each went to school. Kayla went to school in a predominantly black county, black community, and they went to school in a predominantly white county, right? And it just made so much of a difference. And it just, I shouldn't have been floored because I knew it, but to actually see it, right? To actually see it in my face like that, it was like, wow. And quite frankly, it pissed me off. But I don't want to get too deep into that, but I just wanted to kind of validate that point that you made, Ray, about one of the reasons why financial literacy is not taught, to the underprivileged. So
Yeah, he gonna drop us off right there, man. We running out of time. That's a big one, man. I mean, living out here, I'm well aware of the struggles of PG County. That's why I chose to live on this side of the bridge because it's a wealthy, predominant area. But we see historically, um, what they tend to do is that's right, buddy. What they tend to do is they will divert money from our school systems to predominantly white school systems. It's not, even when we're making money and tax money and all of this, they still divert that money to different school systems. So, one of the things that they always talked about is, why do we I'm trying to I don't know why I'm too worried about it, but I'm trying not to make this come off the wrong way. But why would we let our oppressors be over our education? You know, and you know, you talk about sending our kids to a school with people that don't understand their experience, don't understand, who they are, where they're coming from, but yet they're going to spend 40 hours of their week with them learning how to move in the world and how this, that, and the other should go. The standardized test issue that came up with things like putting cul-de-sac in a standardized test. And if you grew up like I was, man, I was almost wrong when I figured out what a cul-de-sac was.
Right,
You know,
right.
right.
I look through the ads and I see, I'll be like, dang, I get a house and a sack of Colby? Like, I won. I don't know what cul-de-sac is. So, and just all of those inequities, man. And I don't want to dive too deep, but you made a good point. Like, there's no reason that PG County shouldn't be one of the premier educational systems because
Absolutely.
that is the bedrock of black wealth, not in just this area, but in the country.
In the country, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
And
but
yeah,
yep.
yeah. So
no, I'm sorry, John, but you're absolutely right. It should be, and I had the honor, pleasure, privilege, whatever it is, to have kids attend public school in PG County as well. And what I learned was a few things just in that couple years that they were in school there. But one, the people teaching, a lot of them weren't really invested in our kids' education.
Mhm.
In fact,
Yeah.
I had one of my son's teachers tell me, uh, I went to visit the school, class was rowdy, kids up, walking around. I'm like, how does any learning go on in this environment? And when she noticed I was there, she made them sit down, but I could hear her telling someone else, "Hey, I have mine. Y'all need to get yours. So if you don't want to sit down and
Wow.
learn, then you know what? Too bad for you."
Wow.
And these teachers, they were actually getting paid pretty well. I don't know if you know that, but the teachers with degrees in PG County were back then they were getting paid fairly well, but they weren't necessarily invested in the children. And that's that's the toughest and the most disheartening piece about it is that we've got to care enough to be invested in our kids' education. And
Yeah.
furthermore, the part of also what I saw in PG County was that the parents were so busy chasing capitalism and all the money they could make.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be at home, the kids be doing their homework, and their friends are knocking at the door like 30 minutes after school. I'm like, you don't have homework? Where your parents? Oh, my parents normally don't get home till around 8 o'clock. Oh, so you're walking the street until then, at least. And it's those types of things. And that happened in so many homes, where kids were basically making decisions. There's such thing as a latchkey kid. Well, these kids weren't even latchkey kids. They weren't even making it home. They were just walking the streets and not being educated. And and that's the saddest part because, you know, around 8 o'clock, here comes the mom in the BMW and the dad in the Benz, in a nice big house. But your kids can't pass a standardized test, no matter what you think about a standardized test, but they can't pass it.
Right. It might suck, but that's what we're stuck with
Hmm.
right now. So yeah, you're right.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is that you're not even teaching them to pass the test.
Yeah.
So I just think that it's imperative that responsible adults in this country that have kids take on the responsibility of raising the kids and making sure that they get educated, no matter what you think that is, but making sure that they get educated or at least understand the importance of learning and getting something that no one can ever take away from them. You teach a young kid how to swim, how to play chess, those are skills that they have with them that they can build upon. You teach them to be a critical thinker. That's a skill that's going to teach them to be a great decision maker. I mean, you have to be invested in making sure that kids get the skills that are going to help them go out in this big bad world and be able to make their own way. Whether that's getting a formal education, learning a skill that they can use to support themselves, you know, like some people I've known, teaching themselves how to operate the guts of a computer. But it just seems like we are so enamored with what society says we should care about, what society says success should look like for us, that we have somehow, and I'm just talking about as a community of folks, and like we have somehow lost our way in really investing in our kids. And just one last point. So I have a thought regarding desegregation and how that was not necessarily the best thing for black folks. Because, in black communities, especially in the South, if you go to some of these southern cities, Charlotte, uh, Memphis, Nashville, Columbia, South Carolina, other parts of Mississippi, and you talk to black educators from back then, they were so invested in young African Americans that they were teaching. They taught them, you know, and so when they desegregated the schools, well, guess what? Now other folks got the benefit of these caring souls because these people cared about young people no matter what their color was. We lost that benefit because when we went to schools that were predominantly white, we got access to books and and things that we could learn, but they weren't really invested in teaching us. And so I think that we have to, and I think parents should always take the responsibility of making sure that your children are educated, whatever that means, whatever that looks like, whatever it costs you as far as your time and your attention. That's the one thing. If we're going to, make the decision to have kids and bring them into this world, we need to make sure that we're educating them and teaching them the things that they need to survive in this world. And so I'm with Kev. The idea of banning books is so utterly ridiculous, right? You don't want everyone to understand the truth of our history. No matter how you feel about it, yeah, you might feel bad about it, but if it wasn't you, what do you feel bad about?
Right.
Right?
Right.
You
Right. Yeah.
know? So, but
Yeah.
what's important is that history is taught so that it's not repeated.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I'll get off that soapbox.
Yeah. Nah, man, that was great stuff. And man, when I tell you we could go on another hour just talking about those points that you just
Right.
made. But I know we're short on time, and I don't know if anybody has any final thoughts before we wrap this up. All right. Well, and with that, we want to thank each of you for taking the time to join us. As we wrap up this week's episode, I want to leave you with a quote by Malcolm X, who stated, "Education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today." Until next time, peace.